The first thing the colonists of Khepri outpost noticed was the silence. Not the peaceful kind, but the kind that meant something had gone terribly wrong. Commander Arjun Vale stood alone in the observation dome, staring into the endless black beyond the station's cracked glass. The stars were still there. The gas giant below still burned blue and gold. But the steady pulse of communication traffic that once filled their channels had vanished completely. No updates. No supply confirmations. No answers. That was when Arjun knew the truth before anyone dared say it aloud. They had been left behind. Khepri outpost wasn't supposed to matter much. It was a small human research and mining station on the edge of explored space, staffed by fewer than 600 people. Scientists, engineers, families, and children, sent here by the Unified Stellar Accord to extract exotic particles from the planet below. They were promised protection. They were promised resupply. They were promised evacuation if things went bad. Promises made by aliens who no longer needed humans alive. "Commander," said a tired voice behind him. Arjun turned to see Myra Solis, Chief Systems Engineer. Her hair was pulled back in a messy knot, her jumpsuit smeared with coolant stains. She hadn't slept properly in weeks. "It's confirmed," she said quietly. "The last relay buoy went dark an hour ago. Someone shut it down from the Accord side. Not damaged. Disabled." Arjun exhaled slowly. "So it's official." Myra nodded. "We're alone." The words hung heavy between them. The Accord had been fighting a brutal war against the KOLL Dominion, a ruthless alien empire that believed weaker species existed only to serve or vanish. Humans were considered useful once, for labor, adaptability, creativity, but never equal. And now that the war had turned desperate, humans were expendable. Khepri outpost was proof. In the days that followed, the station changed. Lights dimmed to conserve power. Rations were cut in half. Entire research wings were sealed and abandoned. People spoke in whispers, afraid that saying the truth too loudly would make it permanent. Dr. Elias Rourke, head of Xenocience, gathered Arjun in the medical bay one night. "We're already seeing immune collapse in some of the younger colonists," he said. "Our nutrient printers depend on Accord compounds. We don't have replacements." "How long?" Arjun asked. Elias didn't answer right away. 6 months, he finally said. "Maybe less." Security Chief Lena Hart wasn't the type to sugarcoat things. During the emergency council meeting, she slammed her fist on the metal table. "We have 3 defense turrets left, half ammo, and shields that barely stop micrometeors. If the KOL find us, we won't last an hour." "Then we stay quiet," someone said. "And starve." Lena shot back. Arguments broke out. Fear turned into anger. Anger turned into blame. That night, Arjun authorized something forbidden. The distress beacon. It was old. Ancient. By modern standards. Built during humanity's early space expansion, before the Accord restricted who could call for help. The beacon didn't care about politics. It didn't filter species. It screamed into the void using raw, primitive physics. Anyone could hear it. Friends. Enemies. Monsters. Myra hesitated before activating it. "Once this goes live, we can't turn it off," she said. "We'll light up like a flare." Arjun met her eyes. "We're already dead if we don't." She pressed the switch. The station shuddered as energy surged through forgotten conduits. Somewhere deep inside Khepri outpost, the beacon awakened and roared its message into the dark. Humans here. Still alive. Still fighting. Then came the waiting. Weeks passed. Then months. Hope faded. Children grew thinner. Engineers scavenged their own creations for spare parts. Scientists became farmers. Soldiers became teachers, teaching kids how to breathe calmly when the power flickered at night. Some colonists stopped looking at the stars altogether. Until the sensors screamed. Myra burst into the command deck, breathless. Contacts. Multiple warp signatures, dropping in system. Lena was already moving. Identification. None, Myra said. No Accord codes. No Kryll patterns either. Arjun's heart pounded as the main display activated. 3 massive shapes tore themselves out of hyperspace above the gas giant. They were unlike anything the Accord built. Sleek. Scarred. Asymmetrical in ways that suggested adaptation rather than elegance. Their hulls bore burn marks, patched armor, and symbols no alien database recognized. One symbol repeated across all 3 ships. An old one. A blue circle. A white star. Earth. A transmission cut through the static, rough, unpolished, and unmistakably human. This is UNS Resolute, the voice said. To the human colony broadcasting the distress beacon, hold on. You're not forgotten. Arjun felt his knees weaken. Myra laughed and cried at the same time. Lena whispered a single word. No way. But celebration died instantly as new alerts blared. Another ship was entering the system. Bigger. Heavier. Kryll. The enemy had followed the signal too. The human warship moved without hesitation, engines flaring bright as a dying sun. This is Captain Jonah Cross, the voice continued, calm and sharp. All hands, prepare for combat. For the first time since the Accord abandoned them, humanity was no longer alone. And the galaxy was about to remember something it had chosen to forget. Humans never stop coming back. The Kryll warship emerged fully from hyperspace like a blade sliding from a sheath. Its hull was black and angular, covered in weapon ports that glowed a dull red as power surged through them. Even at a distance, it dwarfed Khepri outpost and matched the largest of the 3 human ships. On the command deck of the UNS Resolute, Captain Jonah Cross stood perfectly still, hands clasped behind his back. His uniform was worn, patched in places, nothing like the polished attire once favored by the Accord. Around him, human officers moved with quiet urgency. Confirm Kryll designation, Cross said. Tyrant-class cruiser, replied Lieutenant Sana Iqbal. Heavy plasma batteries, carrier bays, troop complements estimated at 3,000. Someone else might have flinched. Cross did not. They think we'll run, he said calmly. They always do. On Khepri outpost, Arjun Vale watched the exchange on the main screen, his chest tight with fear and awe. The human ships had placed themselves between the station and the Kryll cruiser without being asked. No negotiation. No delay. Just action. They came back for us, Myra whispered. Lena Hart folded her arms, eyes sharp. Let's hope they can fight for us too. The Kryll transmission cut through all channels, harsh and metallic. Human vessels. This system is under Kryll Dominion claim. Withdraw immediately or be erased. Captain Cross leaned closer to the console. This system contains human civilians, he replied. You're trespassing. A pause followed. Then the Kryll laughed. Humans were stripped of Accord protection cycles ago. You have no claim. You have no allies. Cross smiled faintly. We don't need them. The Resolute fired first. To the Kryll, human weapons had always seemed crude. Solid projectiles. Kinetic strikes. Inefficient compared to elegant plasma and energy beams. That belief shattered when the first volley hit. Instead of scattering against shields, the human rounds detonated in controlled bursts of electromagnetic chaos. The Kryll cruiser's shields flickered, collapsed in sections, then failed entirely along one flank. What did they fire? Arjun breathed. Myra's fingers flew across her console. Hybrid mass drivers with EMP cores. They're using old physics, stuff the Accord banned because it was inelegant. Lena grinned. Figures. The Kryll cruiser responded with fury. Plasma beams lanced out, tearing through space and slamming into the Resolute shields. The human ship rocked violently, alarms blaring. Shields holding at 60%, an officer called out. Cross didn't retreat. Bring the hammer online, he said. Below the Resolute, panels shifted. A massive structure unfolded along the ship's spine, something the Kryll sensors didn't immediately recognize. Then gravity screamed. A localized gravitational pulse slammed into the KRYLL cruiser, warping space itself around its hull. The alien ship groaned, metal tearing as its own mass worked against it. On Kepri outpost, colonists stared in disbelief. "They weaponized gravity," Myra said softly. "That's insane." "That's human," Arjun replied. The second and third human ships joined the fight, moving unpredictably, using the gas giant's radiation belts as cover. KRYLL targeting systems struggled to track them. Human pilots flew manually, ignoring automated safety limits that alien vessels never exceeded. One mistake would mean death. They flew anyway. The KRYLL cruiser launched fighters, dozens of sleek alien craft swarming like insects. Human ships answered with something unexpected. Small, rugged vessels deploying from hidden bays. "They're smaller than shuttles," Lena noted. "Drones," Myra said. "No, wait. They are piloted." Arjun stared. "That's suicide." "No," Myra corrected. "That's commitment." Human strike pilots weaved through plasma fire, exploiting split-second openings. They flew close enough to scrape alien hulls, planting charges, sabotaging engines, disabling weapon ports. Losses were taken. Ships exploded. But the swarm didn't break. The KRYLL cruiser began to slow. On the Resolute, Captain Cross watched the enemy carefully. "Now," he said. A final salvo fired, not at the cruiser's core, but its command array. The blast severed internal coordination. Fighter control vanished. Weapon systems stuttered. The massive KRYLL ship drifted, wounded but not destroyed. "Why didn't they finish it?" Lena asked. Captain Cross's voice came through the channel, clear and steady. "Because we're not here to send a message. We're here to save lives." Shuttles launched immediately, heading for Kepri outpost. Inside the station, chaos turned into motion. Engineers guided docking procedures. Medics prepared triage zones. Children pressed faces to viewports, watching ships painted with old Earth symbols descend like guardians. Arjun met Captain Cross face-to-face in the command hall minutes later. The captain looked older up close. Lines marked his face. His eyes carried weight. "You waited 6 months," Arjun said quietly. Cross nodded. "We were hunted. Blockaded. Earth was isolated after the Accord labeled us a destabilizing species. They thought cutting us off would make us disappear." "And instead?" Myra asked. Cross glanced at the wounded being carried past. "Instead, we got creative." He explained quickly. How Earth rebuilt in secret. How humans scavenged forgotten tech, rewrote old rules, combined banned sciences. How they formed the independent human fleet, not to conquer, but to protect their own. "We heard your beacon late," Cross admitted. "The KOLL were masking signals across half this sector. But once we found you, we weren't leaving." An alarm interrupted him. "The KRYLL cruiser is recharging weapons," an officer said. "It's not retreating." Cross turned to Arjun. "We can evacuate maybe 70% of your people before it recovers." Arjun didn't hesitate. "Then we fight for the rest." Cross studied him, then nodded. "That's the spirit they warned us about." Above Kepri outpost, human ships repositioned, damaged but unbroken. The KOLL commander, furious and humiliated, transmitted one final message. "You delay the inevitable, humans. Dominion fleets are coming." Captain Cross answered without anger. "Good." Because humanity hadn't just come to rescue a forgotten colony. They had come to take their place back in the galaxy. And this time, they weren't asking permission. Kepri outpost had never seen a day like this. Explosions rattled the station's walls as the KOLL cruiser tried to regain control of the battlefield, while human shuttles moved tirelessly between orbit and surface. The colonists, once huddled in fear, now acted with purpose. Every hand had a role. Every mind had a plan. Commander Arjun Vale led a team to the surface, navigating through craters and twisted metal from earlier attacks. He was joined by Myra Solis, now coordinating shuttle landings, and Lena Hart, moving civilians to safer zones. "This is chaos," Arjun said, voice low but steady. "And somehow, it's working." Myra pointed to the display on her handheld console. "The human ships are using the gas giant's magnetosphere to mask energy signatures. The KOLL can't target them accurately." "Classic human ingenuity," Lena muttered, almost smiling. Meanwhile, below the planet's surface, in a network of caves and tunnels that had been untouched for centuries, human engineers had activated hidden turbolifts. These lifts, originally part of an abandoned mining operation, now allowed colonists to escape to safer zones quickly. The KOLL had assumed the planet was sparsely populated and that most humans would flee aimlessly. They hadn't counted on strategy. From orbit, the UNS Resolute broadcasted instructions in real time. "All civilians, follow the marked paths. Avoid open terrain. Shields are only effective within designated corridors." Back on the surface, Arjun moved with the first group of evacuees. Families carried what little they could, dragging children past scorch marks and debris. He glanced up at the sky. Human ships weaved like predators, dodging plasma fire, striking at KOLL fighters in daring maneuvers that defied logic and physics. "They've adapted too fast," Lena said beside him, watching one shuttle narrowly avoid a blast. "The KOLL don't know how to respond." Myra adjusted her console, eyes wide. The beacon didn't just call them, it forced humans to think bigger. "They've coordinated attacks we didn't even know they could do." Arjun pressed forward, reaching a clearing where the youngest children were waiting with medics. Suddenly, a shadow fell over them. A smaller KOLL fighter swooped down, firing indiscriminately. "Move!" Lena yelled, pulling the children into a nearby crater. Energy bolts scorched the ground where they had just stood. But the humans were ready. A squad of young pilots, barely more than teenagers, descended from a shuttle at high speed, weaving in perfect sync to intercept the fighter. In moments, it was disabled, spiraling into the gas giant below. Even the colonists watched in awe. Humanity was not just surviving, they were controlling the battlefield. Back in orbit, Captain Jonah Cross had noticed the KOLL cruiser's main weapon arrays were overheating. He called his officers to a rapid briefing. "We'll hit them at the flank where shields are weakest. Use EMP bursts first, then follow with targeted mass driver strikes. Minimize casualties." It sounded impossible. But human strategy had always thrived on improbability. On the ground, Arjun and Lena coordinated with the colonists to set up defensive positions. Engineers rigged old mining equipment into makeshift barricades and energy traps. Even children helped, rolling rocks into paths that funneled enemy troops into zones where human drones waited. As night fell, the battle intensified. Plasma fire illuminated the clouds, casting long shadows across the frozen terrain. The KOLL didn't anticipate a coordinated human response. Their disciplined, militaristic approach faltered in the face of ingenuity, adaptation, and sheer determination. In the command center, Myra studied the incoming telemetry. "They're breaking formation," she said. "The KOLL cruiser is retreating to repair." "Good," Arjun replied. "We need every evac shuttle to leave now before they regroup." From above, the colonists could see the human fleet executing a flawless withdrawal strategy. The KOLL were momentarily stunned, not by power, but by intelligence, creativity, and resilience. Humanity had turned the tables. Captain Cross contacted Arjun. "All units on the ground, we've held them long enough. Evacuate immediately. You've earned this victory." As the first shuttles rose, carrying families and wounded alike, Arjun paused to watch the sky. He saw not just ships, but symbols of human determination, lights of ingenuity against the darkness. The KOLL may have underestimated them, but humans never stayed underestimated for long. And this was only the beginning. The evacuation was underway, but it was far from over. Khepri Outpost had become a war zone, with smoldering craters and twisted metal scattered across the frozen plains. Yet, for the first time in months, hope pulsed through the veins of the colonists. Commander Arjun Vale and Security Chief Lena Hart led groups of civilians toward the extraction points. Every step was measured, every action deliberate. Children clung to their parents, faces streaked with soot, yet their eyes sparkled with wonder as human warships darted above them, moving in ways no alien could predict. "Keep moving!" Lena shouted as a sudden tremor ran through the ground. A plasma blast from the Kryll cruiser had hit near the northern ridge. Dust and snow sprayed into the air. Arjun pointed at the cave network below. "This way. We have cover." The colonists rushed toward the tunnels, which were now fully mapped by engineers. The older kids carried supplies, while the adults helped the sick and wounded. Every person had a role, every mind a plan. Meanwhile, the human fleet in orbit executed coordinated maneuvers designed to confuse and split Kryll forces. Captain Jonah Cross barked orders from the UNS Resolute, using every trick in human tactical history. Guerrilla tactics, diversionary attacks, feints, and unpredictable flight paths kept the alien commander off balance. In one daring move, small fighter squadrons flew perilously close to the gas giant's atmosphere. The Kryll assumed the humans would crash or overheat, but the pilots had calculated every trajectory to perfection. They used the planet's magnetic storms to mask their attacks, striking the Kryll cruiser in unexpected locations. Explosions lit up space like fireworks, and even the most experienced colonists on Kepri outpost watched in awe. Back on the ground, Arjun, Lena, and a team of engineers improvised defenses. Mining equipment became barricades. Drones were deployed as decoys. Even the station's old power cores were rigged as temporary EMP generators. The Kryll had assumed humans would flee blindly, but instead, the colonists fought for every meter, slowing the enemy enough for more civilians to reach shuttles. "Commander!" Myra's voice crackled over the comm. "The outer shuttle lanes are under fire." Arjun scanned the horizon. A squad of Kryll drop units had deployed from the crippled cruiser, moving to intercept escaping colonists. Without hesitation, Arjun signaled a counterattack. Using remote-controlled drones loaded with magnetic pulses, the humans disrupted the alien formations, sending them tumbling and crashing into the icy landscape. Above, the human fleet continued its relentless assault. The Kryll cruiser, battered and bleeding systems, attempted to regroup, but every human maneuver had anticipated their next move. For the first time in centuries of expansion, the Kryll experienced chaos, not from force, but from creativity. Inside one of the shuttles, families huddled together, watching the skies. An elderly scientist, Dr. Lyra Kenning, whispered to a young boy beside her, "Humans always find a way." The boy's eyes widened as a human fighter swooped past the shuttle, using precise thruster bursts to shield them from plasma fire. "Why didn't the Accord help us?" he asked. Dr. Kenning smiled faintly. "Sometimes, it takes humans to save humans." Back on Kepri's surface, Arjun and Lena reached the last extraction point. Only a handful of civilians remained. They were sick, injured, and scared, but determination burned in their eyes. "We'll make it," Arjun said firmly. "We're not leaving anyone behind." The Kryll cruiser fired again, targeting the extraction zone. Energy beams tore into the frozen earth, sending shards of ice and rock into the air. Lena grabbed the nearest evacuee and sprinted. Arjun followed, covering their retreat. Myra activated an emergency energy shield, diverting the plasma fire just enough to give the last shuttle a clear path. Above, the human fleet executed a final maneuver. The UNS Resolute deployed a series of massive EMP bombs in precise intervals, targeting the Kryll cruiser's engines and weapon arrays. Sparks and explosions erupted along the alien vessel's hull. The cruiser wobbled, systems failing, and finally drifted into an uncontrolled orbit around the gas giant. The humans had done the impossible. They had turned the battlefield into a stage for ingenuity, courage, and resilience. The colonists of Kepri Outpost, once abandoned, starving, and hopeless, were now under the protection of their own kind. As the last shuttles ascended, Captain Cross communicated one final message. "All colonists accounted for. Kepri Outpost is secure, for now. The Kryll know humanity has returned, and they will never forget it." Arjun, watching from the surface, allowed himself a deep breath. For the first time in months, the crushing weight of fear lifted. Around him, the colonists cheered softly, not because the war was over, but because humans had shown that no force, no empire, could ever truly abandon them. The stars above no longer felt empty. They belonged to humanity now. The evacuation was nearly complete. Shuttles rose into the sky, their engines streaking fire across the frozen plains of Khepri Outpost. Below, the colonists watched, hearts pounding with a mixture of fear and awe. The Kryll cruiser, crippled but not destroyed, drifted in orbit, sending out warning pulses that had become increasingly chaotic under the human assault. Commander Arjun Vale stood atop a ridge overlooking the main extraction zone. The wind howled, carrying snow and dust into his eyes. Beside him, Lena Hart checked the last group of evacuees. Children clung to parents, while engineers carried essential equipment, anything that might allow the station to be rebuilt elsewhere. "They've underestimated humans for the last time," Lena said quietly, eyes scanning the sky. "Or they'll never forget it," Arjun replied, voice tight with determination. From orbit, Captain Jonah Cross orchestrated the final moves. The UNS Resolute, despite damage, led a series of daring maneuvers to block the Kryll cruiser's potential escape routes. Smaller human craft flanked the enemy, coordinating attacks that combined precision, creativity, and adaptability, the hallmarks of human ingenuity. Inside the Kryll cruiser, confusion reigned. Alien officers shouted orders, only to see their systems failing unpredictably. Weapons misfired, shields collapsed, and navigation systems faltered under human-engineered EMP pulses. The Kryll had anticipated force, efficiency, and discipline, but humans were unpredictable. Humans adapted. Humans survived. Below, Arjun and his team executed the final part of their ground strategy. Improvised traps, energy disruptors, and even crude thermal mines delayed any remaining Kryll squads attempting to intercept the shuttles. Every colonist played a part. Engineers rigged old mining drones into autonomous defenders, while medics kept the wounded moving. Children ran alongside adults, carrying emergency beacons that could relay real-time updates to orbiting ships. Myra Solis monitored energy flows across the outpost. "We're almost clear," she said. "The last shuttle is taking off in 2 minutes." Arjun looked at the horizon, spotting the streak of the final shuttle. "Everyone ready?" he asked. Heads nodded, fear tempered by resolve. Then, as if sensing humanity's collective defiance, the Kryll cruiser fired one final barrage. Plasma beams tore across the plains, striking close to the extraction site. Arjun instinctively pushed the nearest evacuees behind a snowbank, shielding them as Lena activated a last-minute energy barrier. The beams hit the barrier and were deflected, sending fragments of ice flying skyward. Captain Cross saw the attack and made the decision that would define this battle. "All ships, full spread maneuver," he commanded. "EMP overload in 3, 2, 1. A brilliant pulse radiated from the human fleet, striking the Kryll cruiser's critical systems. Sparks erupted across its hull, and the massive alien vessel lost all propulsion. Its weapons shut down. Slowly, inexorably, it began to drift, powerless, unable to continue its assault. On the ground, Arjun allowed himself a brief smile. "It's over." But he knew better. The war wasn't finished. Humanity had survived, but the galaxy was still full of threats. Still, for the first time in months, they had reclaimed control of their destiny. The last shuttle lifted off safely, carrying the colonists toward the human fleet. On board, families clutched each other tightly. Children pointed at the retreating Kryll cruiser, marveling at the courage displayed above and below. Captain Cross addressed the evacuees via the shuttle speakers. "You've survived because you never gave up. Because even when abandoned, even when ignored, humans keep fighting. We adapt, we create, and we endure. Today, the galaxy witnessed humanity's strength, and it will not forget." Arjun looked down at Khepri Outpost one last time. Snow swirled around the deserted structures, evidence of months of hardship and resilience. But the station no longer felt abandoned. It had become a symbol, a testament to human ingenuity, creativity, and determination. As the fleet moved away from Khepri, the stars no longer seemed indifferent. They shone with recognition, as if the universe itself had acknowledged humanity's arrival. Myra, Lena, and Arjun stood together on the shuttle deck, watching the gas giant fade below them. "We're alive," Myra said softly. "Yes," Arjun replied, voice filled with quiet pride. "And now, we fight smarter. We fight together. And we make sure the galaxy knows, humans never stop coming back." Above them, the crippled KOLL cruiser drifted silently, a stark reminder of underestimation and human resilience. Humanity had been left behind, abandoned, and overlooked. But through ingenuity, courage, and unyielding spirit, they had turned despair into triumph. The colonists of Kepri Outpost were alive. Humanity had returned. And from this day forward, the universe would never forget the meaning of HFY, humans, F***. The stars were theirs now.